Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Culture Report. I'm Antonia Velez. The city of Minneapolis is mourning after a shooter fired at a Catholic school, killing at least 2 children. 17 others were wounded, most of them also children. The 23-year-old shooter also died. The Minneapolis police chief says the shooter was a former student at the school and previously a member of the church. According to a church Facebook post, in 2021, the shooter's mother had also worked there for 5 years. We are still learning more about pieces of evidence that might point to a motive. Police say the shooter released 2 YouTube videos. One shows several weapons and ammunition, some with phrases like "Kill Donald Trump" and "Where is your God?" A second video shows the shooter pointing to 2 windows in what looks like a drawing of the church and then stabbing it with a knife.
This is an individual that harbored a whole lot of hate towards many people and many groups of people. And clearly intended to commit an act of violence with as much carnage and trauma as possible for the purpose of their own personal notoriety.
Federal officials have referred to the shooter as transgender, although their gender identity wasn't clear. In 2020, a judge approved a petition signed by their mother asking for a name change. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey has condemned all hatred being directed at the transgender community.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity.
This is just the latest in a long list of mass shootings targeting schools since the 1999 Columbine school massacre in Colorado. And the Trump administration has warned dozens of states they must remove all gender ideology content from some federally funded sexual education programs or face losing the money. A division of the Department of Health and Human Services sent letters to more than 40 states and territories saying they have 60 days to eliminate this content, which the department labeled as quote-unquote delusional ideology, from curriculum paid for through the Personal Responsibility Education Program, or PREP. Now, this is a federally funded program that aims to work with vulnerable youths. It was created in 2010 to help prevent teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. The letters flag specific content for removal, including things that revolve around pronouns, transgender identity, sexual orientation, and discrimination faced by individuals in the LGBTQ+ community. Now, thousands of dollars are at stake for some states, and in Colorado, there's more than $1 million in remaining federal funds for this program that are at risk. Advocates with Rocky Mountain Equality say the impact of this goes way beyond the money.
Inclusive sex education has already been researched, studied, has shown to be factually accurate and supporting health equity. And so to remove that and let youth find whatever they can on the internet will be very damaging and will increase those health inequities.
And the director of the CDC is out of a job after spending just 2 weeks in her new role. Susan Monterez was fired late Wednesday night. Her departure follows a tense meeting this week with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over issues relating to vaccine approvals and the current Vaccine Advisory Committee at large. Officials say she wasn't willing to align with the Trump administration's priorities and refused to commit to any changes the administration was pushing, prompting Kennedy to demand her resignation. When the pressure wasn't enough, the administration made the decision to fire her. Now that prompted 4 top CDC officials to resign. And grieving parents who lost their teenage son to suicide are suing the parent company of ChatGPT, saying the AI chatbot assisted him in taking his own life. The nearly 40-page wrongful death lawsuit against OpenAI and CEO Sam Altman claims ChatGPT helped 16-year-old Adam Rain, quote, explore suicide methods. The parents also claim the chatbot offered to write the first draft of his suicide note, establishing itself as his only confidant, and even encouraged him to keep his plan to end his life to himself. The New York Times reports that while ChatGPT did send Adam some messages suggesting he should seek help, there were crucial times in which it deterred him from doing so. This is what the family's lead attorney said in an interview with CNN.
At one point, Adam said, "I want to leave a noose out so that someone finds it so they can stop me from committing suicide." And the chat box said, "Don't do that. Just talk to me."
Now, OpenAI has responded to the lawsuit, sending sympathies to the Rains family, and it also says it's looking into ChatGPT's safety protections. This is not the first time a family has sued an AI company for alleged contributions to kids' self-harm or suicide, and although Adam's case marks the first wrongful death lawsuit against OpenAI specifically, the company is facing multiple lawsuits for a variety of accusations, including copyright infringement. Now, just a reminder that there's always help out there if you're struggling or if someone you know is going through a hard time. Colorado Crisis Services has counselors available 24/7. Their number is right there on the screen, and you can also reach the National Suicide and Crisis Line by dialing 988. And a man wrongfully deported to El Salvador's notorious mega prison by the U.S. and later brought back to face human smuggling charges earlier this year is staying in the U.S. a little longer. On Wednesday, a federal judge said they're planning to have the Trump administration testify in early October about the government's efforts to redeport Kilmer Abrego Garcia, according to CNN. This prohibits his removal from the U.S. for several more weeks. Now, this comes after Abrego Garcia's lawyers told a federal judge that he is seeking asylum for the second time in the U.S. The administration maintains that he is part of the MS-13 gang, which Abrego Garcia denied. They have also said it has plans to deport him to Uganda, but Abrego Garcia says he fears he will be persecuted or tortured there. For the time being, Abrego Garcia is expected to remain in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody. And a top Florida official says a controversial state-run immigration detention facility will likely be empty in a few days. That's according to an email exchange shared with the AP. A judge ordered the facility dubbed Alligator Alcatraz to shut down by late October. The order comes after reports of unsanitary conditions and detainees being cut off from the legal system. Environmental groups and a Native American tribe also brought a lawsuit over concerns about it being located in the environmentally sensitive Everglades. Right now, Republican Governor Ron DeSantis' administration and the federal government are fighting the decision. Attorneys for the Department of Homeland Security say if the order is carried out, it would disrupt the federal government's ability to enforce immigration laws. And civil rights advocates are suing to block Texas's new congressional maps. The NAACP argues the maps are racially discriminatory. The organization accuses the Texas legislature of engaging in gerrymandering to prevent Black and Latino voters from electing candidates of their choice. Texas Republicans recently passed a plan to redraw the state's congressional lines in order to give the GOP as many as 5 more House seats in the 2026 midterms. The move by Texas Republicans prompted California to do the same there. Democrats passed their own redistricting maps. It would also give Democrats 5 seats in the U.S. House. President Trump said the Justice Department will sue California. And Trump also signed an executive order on Monday to crack down on people who desecrate the American flag. The order enacts stricter penalties on American flag burning, subjecting those who burn the flag to 1 year in prison. Quote, where there's evidence of criminal activity. However, in 1989, the Supreme Court declared flag burning a protected form of speech under the First Amendment. President Trump acknowledged the ruling, but said there's still room to prosecute flag burning if it is, quote, likely to incite imminent lawless action or amounts to, quote, fighting words. The order also called for Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue litigation to challenge the 1989 ruling in an attempt to get the issue back in front of the Supreme Court. And this week marks 70 years since the lynching of Emmett Till. The government has released new records about his murder to the public. The documents describe how several federal agencies, including the Justice Department and the FBI, responded to Till's brutal murder. In 1955, 14-year-old Till was falsely accused of whistling at a white woman at a Mississippi grocery store. And a few days later, 2 white men abducted, tortured, and killed him. The men were acquitted of murder by a jury composed of only white men, but they confessed to killing Till in a 1956 interview. The case has been reopened several times, but it was closed without charges being filed in 2021. The brutality of Till's murder became a turning point that spurred the civil rights movement. His legacy, embedded into American history, is honored through a national monument designated by former President Joe Biden in 2023. And 62 years ago this week, more than 250,000 people came together for the March on Washington, which is known as the U.S.'s largest gathering for civil rights. The march, which is where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech, was an effort opposing employment discrimination and civil rights abuses. It was a catalyst for the 1964 Civil Rights Act that banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The year after that came the Voting Rights Act, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices. This week also marks 20 years since the Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast, devastating Louisiana. The powerful storm caused nearly 1,400 deaths and an estimated $200 billion in damages. It remains the costliest storm in U.S. history, but the monetary cost is only a small part of the picture. This storm made a major impact on the lives of the people who lived there, displacing more than 1 million people, some of whom never went back. A handful of Hurricane Katrina survivors made their way to Colorado after the storm. Ardale Brunette is one of them and talked to 9 News anchor Jordan Chavez about what he went through.
We actually stayed in the city. My home was about 40 miles north of the city, so we typically evacuated vertically. They call it a vertical evacuation. It means getting up into a tall building so you don't have to worry. But flooding was, occasionally a problem, but it was mostly about being in a sturdy place that wasn't going to blow away. So we evacuated vertically, but we didn't make that decision until 20 years ago today, which was the Sunday before the hurricane hit. We had to make a choice to get into the traffic and maybe possibly ride the storm out in the hurricane in our cars, or we could evacuate into the city. We chose to go into the city. Within 24 hours, the city of New Orleans reverted to utter chaos. This was a major metropolitan city in the United States, where it had devolved into chaos in a very short period of time. I had to deal with a lot of issues, including, have I put my own family in danger by this choice? But there were a lot more people who suffered worse fate and catastrophe than we did.
In Ukraine, a Russian air attack on Kyiv's city center early Thursday killed at least 18 people and wounded tens of others. The attack also damaged EU diplomatic offices. This was the first major attack that Russia has carried out on Ukraine's capital in weeks. According to Ukraine's Air Force, Russia launched nearly 600 drones and decoys, as well as 31 missiles, also making this one of the largest air attacks in the 3-year war. Recent initiatives led by the U.S. to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine were fruitless. Britain said the bombardment sabotaged efforts for peace, and Ukraine has reportedly requested an emergency meeting with the UN Security Council. And 3 months after an attack on people walking to raise awareness about Israeli hostages held in Gaza, the group has said it will stop publicly advertising its walks and move them to undisclosed locations due to what they call escalating anti-Semitic harassment. The June Molotov cocktail attack on a group with the Boulder chapter of Run for Their Lives left 15 people injured and 1 dead. Organizers say the gatherings, which have been held every week since the October 2023 Hamas attack on Israel, are peaceful humanitarian walks calling for the release of hostages and are not about politics or religion. And an update on the conflict in the Middle East. More blood was shed in Gaza this week as Israel continued its offensive in the territory, which included back-to-back strikes on the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis, one of the Strip's primary hospitals. The attack was initially reported as 2 strikes, or a quote-unquote double-tap attack. 2 days after it happened, CNN reported it obtained new video that showed the second tap was actually 2 near-simultaneous strikes that hit a group tending to the victims of the first, adding to a total of 3 strikes. Health officials say at least 22 people were killed, among them medical workers, emergency responders, and 5 journalists. At least 189 Palestinian journalists and more than 1,500 health workers have been killed during Israel's campaign in Gaza, according to data reported by the Associated Press. On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement sharing his regret for what he called a, quote, tragic mishap. On Tuesday, though, the Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, said its attacks were in fact targeted, claiming that the troops were aiming at what was believed to be a Hamas surveillance camera. No evidence was immediately provided for this claim, and Israel did not say if troops tried to determine whether cameras were set up by journalists or the militant group before its strikes, according to CNN. The IDF said it would continue investigating any gaps in what happened and insisted it does not intentionally target civilians. Following the strikes, major protests broke out in Israel. Protesters called it the Day of Disruption. In Tel Aviv, crowds took to the streets and highways, blocking roadways and burning tires while calling for the release of all the remaining hostages. Calls to end attacks on Gaza continue across the world, including in Spain. People in the town of Buñol held up a big Palestinian flag in opposition to Israel's offensive before the start of the 80th annual Tomatina celebration. For those who don't know, the Tomatina is a yearly gathering that draws thousands in what is called the world's biggest food fight. People literally just throw tomatoes at each other, respectfully, of course. This tomato throwing tradition started around the mid-1900s, and exactly what originated it is still a debate today. Organizers say that food waste shouldn't be a concern, as tomatoes used are not edible and grown specifically for the tomatina. And it's August and summer is winding down, so you know what that means. It's pumpkin spice season. Starbucks announced the drink's arrival a month earlier than usual this year, and that's because Google searches for pumpkin spice also started earlier. In fact, there's an entire industry that runs on PSL. Professor Thomas McMillan from Texas A&M says PSL season is a gold mine for brands.
And it sells a vibe. You're not just buying cookies or cakes or cream cheeses, you're buying a piece of the fall. And that's why we see pumpkin spice in just about everything. Cereal, protein shakes, coffee, even dog treats. And the good thing is, people will pay a little bit more because they know it's only going to be here for a short period of time.
Now turning to some celebrity-related news, the civil trial against rapper Cardi B kicked off this week. Emily Ellis, a former security guard for a Beverly Hills OBGYN, says Cardi attacked her outside of her job in 2018. Ellis says she was just doing her rounds when she spotted Cardi entering the building, but the rapper says Ellis was trying to record her. Ellis claims Cardi violently attacked her and then got her fired from her job. But Cardi says Ellis was the aggressor in the confrontation. When Cardi B took to the stand, she claimed the two had a bit of a heated exchange that she was worried could escalate.
I was more on a high level of concern, very concerned.
And why were you concerned?
Because I'm pregnant and this girl's about to beat my. Hello?
Are you disabled? Yes or no?
At that moment, when you're pregnant, I'm very disabled. You want me to tell you the things I can't do?
Fine. What was your disability on February 24th of 2018? What was your disability?
I was pregnant. I couldn't protect myself, even if I wanted to. She's like twice my size.
No problem.
Now, Cardi admitted to dropping the F-bomb before asking why Ellis was recording her. She says Ellis is just doing this to try to get money from her. And no matter who you are, you probably know that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are engaged, even if you don't necessarily care. I mean, she's one of the biggest celebrities of our time. I don't know much about Travis, but I've heard he's an okay football player. But the thing is, though, many people do care. Social media is exploding with reactions. News organizations are reporting on it ad nauseum, and even Trump was asked for his opinion during a cabinet meeting at the White House. But what's curious is the majority of people who genuinely care about this have never met Taylor or Travis. Same goes for other celebrities and public-facing figures like politicians who some people feel weirdly connected to. The engagement craze really got us thinking about parasocial relationships in general. We had a chat with Dr. Casey Fiesler, an associate professor of information science at CU Boulder, who focuses on things like technology, ethics, and policy, about how social media might be influencing this false sense of closeness with public figures and why.
If you think about the difference now with respect to how people engage with celebrities, for example, there's a difference between seeing someone on television and seeing them on social media in the same way that you're also seeing your friends. You're seeing the exact same thing with people that you might have a parasocial relationship with. It's this illusion of like hanging out with someone instead of just watching them perform. I think that a lot of influencers especially, and some celebrities as well, are intentionally leaning into these kinds of parasocial relationships because it, can make them seem more authentic in ways that social media tends to reward. Repetition builds familiarity. And so when your social media feed keeps serving you the same celebrities' content over and over because you're engaging with it, I think that familiarity can feel a lot like closeness. I think that Taylor Swift's engagement in particular is a really good illustration of how celebrities' personal lives can become touchstones, like cultural touchstones. But it's not just because they're famous, it's also because of the way that social media platforms design this intimacy and community around them. And I think that we can see that in a lot of contexts. I think that a lot of politicians, for example, who have made really heavy use of social media, a lot of that is about trying for them to feel relatable, authentic. But I think that there's been a lot of intentionality around that, because if you think about politicians, what they want to build is community around them. I think there are a lot of people who could intentionally take cues from parasocial relationships around celebrities to try to design that kind of intimacy and community around yourself in ways that might benefit you as well.
All right, now let's hop into our good news of the week. If you live in Colorado and you're looking for something to do this weekend, Aurora is celebrating Pride. Pride will look a little different this year, as it's a block party style celebration in the middle of Aurora's Cultural Arts District. The free event will be on Saturday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Fletcher Plaza, with stage performances by local artists. And here's an unusual love story for you. When Tisha Rosado got a 2003 Beetle from a veterans auction, her plan to use the car for parts changed when she found a love letter written to the car inside.
I was like, there's no way that we can chop this car up and use it for parts. We need to find the owner, we need to get it running again, and we need to let her know that her best friend is continuing on.
Now, wanting to find the owner, Trisha turned to the best place to spread the word nowadays: TikTok. The video she posted reached a New York woman who goes by the name Tree. Turns out Tree had bought the car years prior to share with her father, since they both grew up loving Herbie the Love Bug. After her father passed away, her bond with the car grew. She named it Herbetta. But during the pandemic, the car stopped running and began to get moldy. Tree decided to sell it and said it felt as if her final connection to her father was gone. But less than a month later, Tisha had restored the car and was able to get it back to Tree with the help of a GoFundMe. And we want to end strong today with the story of a softball team in Lakewood that is often called one of the oldest in the country. The thing is, though, the team hasn't been around as long as, well, its players. 9 News photojournalist Amy Hunter shows us.
I'm part of the Colorado Peaches women's senior softball team. I've been playing with them for 7 years.
This is a tournament just among all Peaches.
I think our youngest is 62, and Mom, we call her Mom, is our oldest, is 91.
I was looking for some activity, and someone at Hilltop said there was a Peaches team, so I came out and tried for it.
The Peaches are really different than any other senior women's softball team. Everybody plays, all ages, all abilities, on the team at the same time.
It's just a league of older ladies that love to play softball and make it fun.
Nice hit!
Woo! I taught line dancing for 30 years, and a couple of the people that was in my class kept saying, you need to come play softball, you need to come. I'm like, I can't play softball, you know? I thought, I'll come watch, right? Well, I got hooked. I got hooked right away because of the people that play this game.
There were not a lot of teams to join before Title IX, and this has given them an opportunity in their 70s to come out and learn a new game and be a part of a team.
I'm just privileged to be a member of the Colorado Peaches team. It's an honor to be here.
You got it, run through. Good job, Linda.
Just the love of all the players that I play with. I can't imagine not being part of something this wonderful. And I'm sure there's a lot of groups that are inspirational to people, but I'm just blessed. I'm lucky. I'm so lucky.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining this week's Culture Report. We'll be back to continue the conversation next Thursday right here on 9 News Plus and 9news.com.